The most dangerous failure is the one you never risk. There is a form of failure that almost no one talks about. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't leave visible scars. It doesn't come with public humiliation or obvious loss. In fact, from the outside, it often looks like success. A stable job, a reasonable income, a life that appears calm, controlled, and respectable. But beneath that surface, something is quietly decaying. Not because life went wrong, but because it was never fully lived. The illusion of a safe life. Modern society is remarkably good at teaching people how to avoid pain. From an early age, we are taught to be careful, practical, realistic. Have a backup plan. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't fail too loudly. We learn that maturity means restraint. Wisdom means caution. Responsibility means choosing what is predictable over what is meaningful. And none of these lessons are entirely wrong. But there is a hidden cost. When safety becomes the highest value, life slowly shrinks. You start making decisions not based on what you want to move toward, but on what you want to avoid. You don't choose a career because it excites you. You choose one because it won't disappoint your parents. You don't pursue a relationship because it feels true. You choose one that looks acceptable. You don't chase the work that calls to you. You choose what keeps you secure. Over time, you become very good at surviving. But survival is not the same as living. Why many people never fail. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Many people who claim they've never failed haven't succeeded either. They simply never risked enough to find out. Failure requires exposure. It requires stepping far enough outside the familiar that something can actually go wrong. If you never leave the shallow water, you won't drown. But you also won't learn how deep you can swim. A life with no real failures often signals something else entirely. A life carefully engineered to avoid being tested. And avoidance, over time, becomes a quiet prison. The fear beneath the fear. People say they're afraid of failure, but that's rarely the real fear. What most people are terrified of is being seen while they are unfinished. They fear looking incompetent, being judged before they are ready, discovering their limits in public, having to admit, I tried and it didn't work. This fear doesn't scream, it whispers. It sounds like, now isn't the right time. I'll do it when I'm more prepared. I don't want to waste what I already have. What if I'm not actually good enough? So instead of choosing, people delay. They keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out of life. And that in-between space is where energy slowly dies. Standing still is not neutral. One of the greatest lies we tell ourselves is that staying put is safer than moving forward. It isn't. Time doesn't pause because you hesitate. While you delay, opportunities age out. Curiosity dulls, courage atrophies, regret accumulates quietly. Standing still feels stable, but it isn't neutral. It is an active decision, one that compounds over time. The tragedy isn't that people fall. The tragedy is that they never discover what direction they could have fallen in. Falling backward versus falling forward. Not all failures are equal. There is a difference between failing backward and failing forward. Failing backward happens when you test life in a way that allows you to retreat unchanged. You try something small, feel uncertain, and quickly return to the familiar. Nothing new is learned. Nothing inside you shifts. You can say you tried, but your life remains identical. Failing forward is different. Failing forward means committing deeply enough that retreat is no longer comfortable. You put yourself in situations where outcomes matter, where your assumptions are challenged, where reality responds to your action. Failing forward gives you data, not theoretical knowledge, lived information. It teaches you what you're actually capable of, where your limits are, what truly matters to you, what paths are no longer viable. It hurts, but it clarifies. And clarity is worth far more than comfort. The myth of total control. Many people build their lives around a subtle illusion that with enough planning, they can control the outcome. They create backup plans for every scenario, exit strategies for every risk, safety nets layered on top of safety nets. Ironically, this obsession with control often prevents meaningful progress. Life doesn't respond to intention. It responds to engagement. You don't gain clarity by thinking longer. You gain clarity by acting and letting reality answer back. And reality's answers are rarely gentle. They come in the form of mistakes, misjudgments, and uncomfortable truths. But those truths are how growth actually happens. Why not trying your best is a hidden self-betrayal. There is a phrase many people use to protect themselves. I didn't really try. It sounds harmless, even humble. But psychologically, it's dangerous, because as long as you don't try fully, you never have to confront the possibility that your best might not be enough. You preserve a fantasy version of yourself, a hypothetical self who could have succeeded if circumstances were different. The problem is that fantasy slowly replaces reality. You live your life defending a potential that never gets tested. And over time, that creates a specific kind of exhaustion, not physical, but existential. The fatigue of knowing you've been holding yourself back. The quiet regret that grows with age. Most regret doesn't arrive dramatically. It doesn't explode. It seeps. It shows up in small moments. When you see someone doing the thing you once dreamed of, when you realize you've been using the same excuses for years, when stability no longer feels reassuring, just empty. People don't usually regret failing. They regret quitting too early, or never starting at all. They regret the conversations they avoided, the risks they postponed, the versions of themselves they abandoned before giving them a chance. Getting lost is not a mistake. Many adults panic when their lives stop making sense. They believe, I should be more certain by now. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing. If I'm confused, something must be wrong. But confusion is not a flaw. It's a signal. It means the old framework no longer fits. Clarity doesn't come from thinking your way out of confusion. It comes from moving through it. Almost no one finds their path in a straight line. The stories that look linear are edited after the fact. What you don't see are the years of doubt, missteps, and course corrections that created the clarity you admire. Stability has a cost. Society praises early stability, but rarely do we talk about what people give up to achieve it. Many trade curiosity for certainty, exploration for predictability, depth for comfort. And years later, when dissatisfaction appears, they can't trace its origin. They think the problem is their job, their partner, their city. Often, the real issue is that they stopped evolving. Stability is useful, but stagnation dressed as security is deadly to the soul. Life rewards honesty, not speed. There is no prize for figuring everything out early. Life doesn't reward those who got it right immediately. It rewards those who stayed honest with themselves long enough to adjust. Sometimes the most mature decision is not pushing forward, but slowing down enough to ask, am I continuing because this still matters to me, or because stopping would force me to admit something uncomfortable? That question is terrifying, but avoiding it doesn't make it go away. Small commitments change everything. Transformation rarely comes from dramatic declarations. It comes from small, private commitments. A habit you finally take seriously. A conversation you stop postponing. A boundary you enforce quietly. A step you take even though no one is watching. Life changes not when you announce your intentions, but when you stop betraying what you already know to be true. The real measure of a life. In the end, life doesn't ask how impressive you were. It asks how honestly you lived. Not how much you achieved, but how much of yourself you were willing to use. Did you show up fully? Did you take risks that mattered? Did you let yourself be seen while you were still becoming? The greatest failure is not falling. It's living so cautiously that nothing inside you ever had a chance to rise. And if this realization makes you uncomfortable, that's not a problem. Discomfort is often the moment before truth. The question is not whether you will fail. The question is whether, years from now, you'll be able to say that you didn't abandon yourself before you even began, before you even